Hello everybody. Today we're going to be drawing Nanachi and Mitty from Made in Abyss. Some of you might be filled with terror from hearing that. Some of you might be filled with joy. I don't know. But it's going to be fine. I was very aware of the series for a while. I haven't really bothered to catch up with it too much until somewhat recently. I haven't drawn either one of them before now, though. So, the purpose of this video as far as drawing goes was I wanted to start out with a drawing that had no color. I wanted it to be... Specifically, I had the internal goal of making it a sepia sort of toned image. I wanted it to be completely line-based. Like, not use any sort of raster shading unless I can get around it. I used hatching in regards to shading, that sort of thing. And I wanted to do this sort of a freestyle in the sense of I had no practice beforehand in regards to drawing either one of them. So I was going completely off of reference images. So, I've never done this style before. I've never drawn these characters before. I never tried to draw any of the characters from this series or this artist before. So it was fairly difficult in that regards, but this is the point of this video, just showing that process. And I guess I'll talk a little bit about the series as well. And I tried to record a little bit of this earlier, but I started going on a rant about the weirdness of the artist and his bizarre way that he draws characters and sexualizes them and so forth. I might touch on that, I don't know. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted to focus just on... The reason why I'm drawing this image in particular. This is not going to be sexual in any way, by the way. Some people were... I did this on stream. Some people came in like, oh no, please no, Plague. But I assured them quickly, no. This one is completely innocent. Because if you know anything about the actual writing of the show or the series, I'm not completely caught up in the manga or anything. I do know how it's not over or anything, but I know what the last chapter is like. So I know what the placement of the characters is. But if you know anything about the writing of this series, you know how you have to treat it like you're going at... You have to... Like, if you're curious, should I watch this series? Yeah. But treat it in the same way that you would treat watching Schindler's List for the first time, I guess. Like, you can't go into it thinking, this is going to have a happy ending. You're going to have a fun, light adventure about these kids going down to this hole that's full of nature and wonder, and there's going to be so many fun memories to be had. No. It's not that. It's not, like, completely abominable or anything like that. And by the way, that's the other thing that's been occupying... I had a lot of things occupying this month, but that comic has been one of them. I'll probably do something on that in December if I can actually get done with the damn thing. It's going to be a short comic starring the scary lesson girls, and it probably will be about 5 pages or so. So, should I watch the series? Yeah, I watch the series. But be aware that, especially whenever you get towards the end of the first season, you're probably not going to be having a good time by that point. You probably won't be. I'm the sort of person that I'm not really bothered by things like that. I actually appreciate them. Like, I actually enjoy a good sort of melancholy or a sad story. Ones that explore the full... To me, that's good writing, whenever you're actually exploring the full range of emotions of human life. And this series definitely does that. Like, it goes through sorrow and everything, of course, but it also, in the same episodes that people associate with, oh my god, I cannot watch this series again, that sort of thing. There's also a lot of comedy in that same exact episode. There's adventure and so forth and so on. So it goes through a lot of different ranges of emotions, but not the bad, like, Star Wars prequels ways where there's like a horrible scene that it's capped off immediately after with some sort of bizarre attempt at comedy or anything like that. It is pretty well written. I don't know how much range it's going to have over its lifespan, but it's a good show. But if you watch it and you're like, fuck you, Plague, why'd you recommend that? Then, yeah, it would be understandable because some people just can't cut it. They just cannot cope with things like that. But anyways, in regards to that, I wanted to make sure that I drew a picture in which the girls were the girls. That's another thing. The girls, I'll just refer to them as being girls. Were just happy to be together, and that was it. Like, I just wanted there to be a good ending picture for both of them, and that's the only thing that I wanted to focus on in regards to the tone and everything. I know I specifically do the it might be sexual, but it's not, because I enjoy that humor. But in this case, no, it's perfectly fine, because they're like, actually, no, I guess that's another thing. I don't really go into it too much. Let's go into it in a second. Okay, first, just talk about process for a moment. Since I never drawn these characters, I think I did 2 primary layers, and then I went back over it with a final line layer, so I actually drew them 3 times. I've kind of learned, the more that I stream, as I watch other people stream their own drawings, I kind of realized I work very fast compared to a lot of people. And I don't know what it is. I don't know. I can't even begin to guess. But that is sort of detrimental to my work sometimes, that I go a little bit too fast. But anyways, if you find that, well, I worked over it twice and it took me 2 days or whatever, I would believe it. I'm just very, very fast for whatever my reason. I don't really understand why. Like this video right now, it's a time lapse. Is he drawing that fast? No. This is a time lapse of, I think, 6 times the normal speed. So it's a drawing that took, I think, a little bit over 3 hours. So this should be, the final video, this should be about 30 minutes, probably like 28 minutes or something. Anyways, so I went back over this twice because I don't know how to draw these characters yet. Obviously I don't have any reference images on the canvas, but I was looking at like a browser over on my other monitor at some thumbnail images. So I had a loose idea of what they were supposed to look like. And I also looked at some reference images of like girls, women, or whatever, embracing one another, hugging. Nothing sexual in this case, but just hugging each other to try to, get that feeling of it being a warm, happy scene, that sort of thing. So I did look at reference images in regards to that, but I did it all by eye. Obviously didn't do any tracing. It's okay to trace. I've been over this before. A lot of just learning to enjoy drawing actually comes from tracing. Don't feel too bad about doing it. It actually can be pretty fun. It's like doing a paint by numbers or something like that. The more that you sort of do it, it actually helps build your confidence, because you can look at the image and look at the differences between what you did and what the original picture was, and it obviously isn't going to look the same. But you can actually get that sort of feeling of, oh, I actually did this. Like, I actually technically drew the same thing. I wonder if I could get better at doing this. I can't remember how many times I did that whenever I was much, much younger, since that was so many years ago. But that is an okay practice to have. There's nothing wrong with it. Don't let anyone tell you anything otherwise in regards to tracing. Tracing is just sort of a no-no in regards to like industrial work or something like that, because it's very apparent whenever you do trace directly. But anyways, point being, freeform modeling, I've never drawn them before, so it was very kind of awkward for me. Nanachi was a lot easier to do, just because I'm used to drawing furry women. Midi was way more difficult, because this is a sepia thing that I already had prepared. This is actually from my Let's Gripe About characterization thing that I was working on earlier this year, that I'll probably never finish, because I never even got a quarter of the way through it, even though I worked on it constantly. It just required way too much. There was just too much going on. It was kind of killing me and killing the channel at the same time, so it's on the back burner. I don't know if I'll ever get to it. It is recorded. It is done in that regard. I just needed to actually do the resource work for it, and it was just taking forever. Anyways, but I haven't drawn the girls before. Everything about this is new. It's freeform modeling. MIDI specifically. he tends to draw characters like this, his human characters like this. They have a lot of space in between their eyes, a lot of negative space. The eyes themselves are actually pretty small, even for anime, sort of, or whatever you want to call it, Eastern drawing. I don't know. So the proportionality of the way that he draws everything is pretty awkward. So it's kind of difficult to get around it. The way that I guess I'll go a little bit into that, is the thing that I started talking about it in my prior attempt at recording this. But the more I talked about it, I thought, man, this is going on way too long and it's getting too weird because I'm having to explain too many things. Because I was getting into, like, the laws regarding how you draw things and whether it's technically illegal and how that relates to, like, the way that the eye reads information and why it makes people feel uncomfortable. And, like, it turned into a whole video about that subject. But point being, this guy does draw characters in a very strange way. Usually whenever you get these sort of Eastern artists, there is this weird sort of undertone that the characters are androgynous, or like Nanachi in this example. Nanachi famously is not specified to be a boy or a girl. I think in the subtitles for the official subtitles, I'm not sure. It might specify her as being a girl. And I see her as being a girl, so if I start referring to Nanachi as female, then that's what's going on. But it's one of those things where, like, Poir in Dragon Ball is another example of this. Of Toriyama, whenever he was designing Poir, the little floating cat guy. Thing. Female, whatever it is. Like I say, Poir actually is being male. But Toriyama said that whenever he was designing Poir, he said, well, I was designing it with sort of a male mentality at the time, but I never really thought about it too much. So if you see the character as being female, go ahead. Who cares? And even in Supers, sometimes Poir does like turn into a girl, like a human girl, to tempt Roshi at some point. But that just might be just because it's a transformation thing, like Oolong did the same thing. But there's more of a cultural thing, especially in Japan, of androgynous characters. Whenever you market them, if a character is being seen as being either male or female, the creators tend to not want to step on the feet of their fans, so they tend to go out of their way to never specify one way or the other whether they are female or male. So if some people are in the comments throwing a tantrum about no, Nachi's a boy or anything like that, that's where that's coming from. It's because it's intentionally not specified, and some people have this weird fetish of Nanachi being male for some reason. And I guess because, like, she's like a furry rabbit creature, or he, whatever. So the design of the character does not have, like, the shirt on or anything, which I'm not really troubled by, it's just a design. So some people have taken that to mean, oh, it's a boy, you know, just whatever. Anyway, it's a fucking weird thing. The artist is kind of a weirdo. And the way that he draws the characters is, in some cases, it is sort of sexual. In other cases, it's just there. Like, in some cases, I don't even know how to get into this. It's such a weird subject. But in many cases, if you read the actual manga, or the webcomic thing that it's published in, because you can't, the subject matter is a little overly intense for Shonen Jump, so they can't publish it. So it's, I forget what the publisher is, but it's not important. But in a lot of the cases, the characters are in these incredibly dire situations in which they're being threatened. And, like, the girl, Rika, like, her shirt will be off or something, and she's exposed, topless or whatever. But there's nothing really sexual about it exactly. But the way that he draws things is sort of, it has this sort of undertone of it being sexual. And a lot of that is because of the way that, there's various reasons, it depends on the context. But the way that he draws also doesn't help, because he has this very sort of brushy, airy sort of look to everything that makes everything look very soft and appealing. So whenever you have a sequence in which someone is in one of these situations in which they're exposed and vulnerable, like you can make the argument that the reason why that's happening is because it's supposed to reflect, oh, she's exposed, she's vulnerable, she's weak, she's in great danger. And you can look at it that way. But then there's completely other times in which the panel is comedic, but it's also sort of sexual at the same time. And if you look at like his in between like panel drawings of the characters, like I think there's a version of Mitty in which she also turns into a Narahate, I think is what it's called. I can't remember. But like a furry creature, in other words. That picture is kind of overtly sexual, and like he's got something going on. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I don't know what sort of weird associations. I'll put it to you this way. Artists are usually fucked up in some way. Like, I'm fucked up in many ways as well. So usually there's, like, one of the reasons why we get into art in the first place is because it's a form of escapism. That's one of the reasons why so many artists are kind of mildly fucked up in some bizarre way. It's because we're looking for some sort of escape, or we need a sort of emotional or cathartic release, and being able to put pencil to paper and create the thing that we want, or to create the outlet that we want, or to depict the thing that we don't like. It just depends on what you're using it for, what the media is for, can be that outlet. So that's the reason why a lot of artists end up being weird. It's because they're weird people that use that as a means to help themselves. Like in regards to me, people make fun of the not a furry thing, and I'm not. I'm gonna be dressing up any fucking fursuits anytime soon. That shit's fucking bizarre to me. But I'm more xenophilic, because I think, like, it's hard to self-analyze, but I think a lot of that comes down to just the fact that whenever I was growing up, I didn't trust people, and I didn't like the people around me, and the people I associated with quote-unquote real life were, like, very, they didn't really treat me particularly well. They were very manipulative. I got used and ignored a lot, and I was just not well treated whenever I was younger. So as a result, the more separated something is from reality, or the more someone is depicted as being, like, abhuman, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know. Like, whether it's like a weird furry creature or something, or whether it's a snake lady, or whether it's just some sort of nebulous thing, like a predator woman or something. Like, the more alien it is, the more xeno it happens to be from the things that I associate as being negative, the more attractive they are. Whether it's sexual attraction, or whether it's just an attraction of, oh, they must be nice, or, it doesn't matter. But that's probably where it's coming from, if I had to self-analyze in some way. So with him, specifically, the guy that's drawing this, I can't remember what his name is, he's probably got something going on. I don't know what it is, but it seems to be linked specifically with youthfulness, danger, like the threat against being young and being innocent, or something like that. Again, I have no idea where that's probably coming from, but he seems to he has something going on. It's something weird. But specifically in regards to how he draws his models, like how, one of the reasons why I was having trouble drawing Mitty, is a lot of artists will draw a character, and they might say the character is 15 or whatever, and then sexualize them, or whatever it happens to be. But if you look at the actual character and no one told you what age the character was, you might guess, I don't know, they're like 24 or something, and you have no idea behind it. Or you might have a character like Etna, the little devil girl, and you say, what does she look like? And you'll say, oh, she looks like a weirdly sexualized 12-year-old or something. Then they say, oh no, she's actually 5,000 years old, or whatever it is. She is thousands of years old, canonically, I think, but I don't know what it is specifically. I'm not an expert on whatever this Gaia, I can't even pronounce the name of the series. I'm just vaguely aware of it. But you have, like, those situations too. So the way that characters look as far as their models and the style goes often doesn't translate whatsoever to real life. Because if you actually look at, like, a real like 10-year-old or something, they have these weird, like, kids are Kids have weird, fucked up bodies because they're kids. I mean, they haven't developed at all yet. So they have this kind of this weird, like pudgy look. Their heads are too big. Their facial features a little bit too large. But they're kind of squinty and stuff too. Like, they're ugly little creatures, aren't they? Horrible little monsters. So if you ever see someone that draws a picture of a kid in an unrealistic way, they never look like kids. They almost look like shrunken adults. They look like a cutesy version of what a kid might be intended to be. So, whenever people complain about things like drawn, like the lolicon shit that comes over from, I guess it's here too, but I was going to say it comes over from Japan. But there's been laws enacted against it. To me, once you start legislating laws against, like, child porn of characters that don't exist, like imaginary people, like, I'm not gonna advocate for a slippery slope thing or anything, but at that point you may just be legislating against, like, thought crimes, because they're not people. Like, they don't even exist. And in many cases, they don't even look like the stipulated ages of the characters. They're this weird, like, especially I am not a fan of this stuff whatsoever, but it's like they're a weird intermediary between, like, a real life 16 or 18-year-old, but also mixed, sort of, with, like, old Mickey Mouse sort of principles of drawing characters. It's really fucked up. But I've been over this before, actually. Not that specifically, but the idea that people are attracted to proportional ratios. Like, their brains are wired this way. Like, whether you're attracted to men or women, there are different sort of proportional ratios for both of them, or something in between even. And the reason why we find attraction to, like, I gave an example of this, of, like, drawing a sexy face on a squash. And because you now see, oh, the top is like the head, you notice that it has this, like, really overt female curvature to it. And of course it's just a fucking squash, so there's nothing really sexual about it. But your brain sort of, if you're, like, looking over it very quickly, your brain has this sort of reaction of, what? Of, like, is that supposed to be sexual? That sort of thing? Because this is how the brain is wired. Because that's how animals reproduce. Their brains are wired to see this sort of ratio and go, oh, desire, for that, whatever that is. And that's where a lot of, like, non-binary ways of looking at sexuality sort of come from as well. Is our brains are wired for something, we're just born that way, and even if you can identify what it is, you just know, well, I'm just attracted to a specific thing. So you might have women that are very attracted to the very curved sort of proportional ratio that usually is associated with being female. That sort of thing. But anyways, point being with all that, whenever you're designing a model for characters like this, usually it's the proportional ratios of the characters that you have to worry about, not what you're trying to depict them as being in regards to age or species even, or whatever it happens to be. It's why I can draw these weird furry creatures and make people feel feelings they don't want to feel. Because I'm actually drawing the ratios from a real-life woman, like an idealized woman. And I'm just putting them onto something that otherwise would never have them. And that's where it's coming from. And so whenever, like, especially these Eastern artists draw characters like this, often they will have those ratios, and that's what makes them feel sexual. So, like, this weird lolicon shit, that it almost sort of has it, like, it still follows the guidelines of those ratios, and that's what makes it creepy, and I guess that's why they're associating with it. Like, there's also, like, a mental thing of, like, pedophiles, like real-life criminals are like this too, where they have this association with, I think it's innocence. Like, that's the thing that they're actually attracted to. They are fetishizing this idea that they are completely innocent of the world, and they have nothing to do with adults, and, like, I don't really understand it, but it's just a product of associations as well. So whenever you mix that with an artist's ability to include those sort of mathematical ratios of how the brain reacts to things, it can be, pretty dangerous, I guess. is my point. But this dude, the thing with him is that the ratios that he works at are that, like, even though he says, well, this is a 12-year-old or this is a 15-year-old, they still look like they're 8s. They actually look like an 8-year-old. And that's where I think a lot of the weirdness is also coming from. So, I don't know. Something's going on with him. I don't know what it is. So if you start reading the manga and you think, this is weird, I feel weird about this, and not like in a good weird way, like in a bad weird way. I get it, because he gets that way sometimes. I don't know what it is. I don't know, and I'm not interested to really know. Because it could go down a dark road, or it could just be something very unfortunate. Like, given the way that the guy writes, because a lot of the subject matter of the story is very sad, and it's about how, not that they're being mistreated or whatever, but it's just like it's about the indifference of nature towards people. So I kind of imagine if there's anything going on with him mentally, it's probably in regards to that he maybe he went through something whenever he was much younger, and he feels like whenever he's drawing the characters, like he's trying to rescue them or to try to explore that feeling that he has that even he doesn't understand. Usually that's kind of the problem with writing and art, is that, again, I've said in the past, if you're not learning as you write, then you're not writing correctly. That goes for the same as far as art goes, that if you're not exploring an idea that's sort of alien or foreign to you, then you might not be learning much of anything. That also has a negative connotation, in that you can be using art or writing to satisfy some sort of darker, unhealthy thoughts, I guess. So it can translate to something negative. And I don't know if that's the case with this guy or anything like that. But I'm sure that he has something going on in regards to some bad experience that he went through whenever he was younger. And that's probably part of what the series is. Which can translate to being a good thing and can translate to being a bad thing. The good part of it is that it's sort of like Stephen King wrote a lot of stories that, like, it has underage orgies for some bizarre fucking reason. But there's also things like Stand By Me, in which the story is about, just the youthfulness, losing innocence, but in sort of a healthy way, and exploring the nature of being that young and learning about the world around you and that sort of thing. So it can translate into a force for good in regards to learning. And I think that the anime, at least, does that. That it is exploring, this is what this picture is meant to be. I'm trying to make something that is very healthful portrayal of just them being happy together. That's what I wanted. In a similar way, that's sort of what the series writing is like as well. Because the series has this sort of undertone of, like, the world is threatening and overtly hostile towards not only the kids, but everyone in the world. And what you get out of life is more dependent on your ability to find the good in the world and to find each other and to make good friends and to cope with the bad things that will inevitably happen. Not because the world is trying to be hostile or antagonistic to you, but simply just because that is the way that the world is. It is completely indifferent to either your suffering or your joy. So you can find great joy in life as long as you're looking for it, but that is entirely dependent on your ability to look past the possible negatives that will be associated with just being alive at all. The series, in a way, is a lot about, like, mental anguish and exploring the negative feelings that you're going to get from having bad life experiences, especially whenever you are younger. And I imagine that's where all this weird stuff is coming from in regards to him. He probably went through something whenever he's younger, and he's just exploring those feelings. So there might not be anything overtly weird to it as far as he's concerned. But that's sort of what the series comes down to. It's just, if you're having bad formative experiences in life, how do you react to them? Can you get past them? The world is going to be completely indifferent to either your suffering or your joy, so if you can find joy in life, then make sure that you can find it. although you're probably going to need help along the way, because no one can do anything alone. The main characters, Reg and Rika, neither one of them would survive at all if it weren't for one another. And Nanachi is sort of the third in the party, if you want to look at it that way, as far as the series goes. And, she or he, whatever, is the same way. Like, she's went through a great deal of tragedy in her life, and a lot of her sort of arc that she gets at the end of the first season is about the decision of, do you go down the darker road of handling your problems and just deal with it that way, or do you go down another road that might be more difficult but has people that are willing to help you along the way, and whether or not that's a good or a bad outcome. But there's healthy ways and unhealthy ways of treating every problem in life, and it's entirely up to you to find a way that's translating that in a healthy way, because there's a lot of dark thoughts that go through everyone's heads all the time, and how we deal with them is very difficult, which makes it very difficult to sort of condemn people for doing things that we might find are bizarre or whatever happens to be. But often trying to treat those dark thoughts is completely necessary and something that should be encouraged, but in a very healthy way. So hopefully, in regards to the girls and Reg, hopefully they'll find their way down to the abyss. And the abyss itself, I guess you could view as being a metaphor for life as well. Hopefully they'll find their way to the bottom where they want to be, but the bottom doesn't end up being the well of despair that it's almost treated as being in regards to the series. Hopefully it ends up being something more hopeful. Although it may just be that the entire point of the series is that the setting takes on the form of whatever you put into it. So maybe once they actually do get to the very bottom of the abyss, it won't be an abyss, it'll be more like the foundation for the hope and vitality of their growth into young adults, or something like that. It depends on how it gets written, I don't know. But it's a pretty good series. Might have a few weird things associated with it, but that's okay too. Good media does challenge people to think in ways that might make them feel uncomfortable. That's what good art does in the first place. You just have to hope that the outcome is a healthy one. Hope you guys like the drawing. Hope you gathered the right lessons from this video, not bad lessons. The Abyss is a dangerous place, but it's a place worth exploring, because if you don't explore it, that's not a healthy outcome either. Just make sure that you explore it with some help, and you have a way of getting out if it really comes down to it. Otherwise, you might turn out like Bonjour did. And that motherfucker needs to die. Bye!